Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Face Off on France 24. I'm Philip Turl. Well, she's back. After months of almost silence, the leader of France's Front National party, Marine Le Pen, has come one step closer to launching her campaign to become France's next president when elections take place in May next year. In a speech at the weekend during the National Front's party conference in Fréjus in the south of France, Le Pen said that if elected, she'd defend national sovereignty. She also praised Britain's vote to leave the European Union and announced plans to build walls across the world. Opinion polls all show that the National Front is almost certainly guaranteed a place in the second round of next year's presidential elections, even if no one knows who her opponents will be. To discuss this and the National Front and Marine Le Pen and her chances of becoming France's next president and the impact the National Front is having on French politics, I'm joined by two of our regular pundits, Gregory Viscusi, who's a reporter with Bloomberg News, and Stefan de Vries from the Dutch television channel RTL4. He's the correspondent in Paris. Welcome to you both, gentlemen. Before we hear from you, I thought we'll have a little report first from Pascal Davies of France 24, who takes a look at what we might expect following the announcement of Marine Le Pen at the weekend.
Thousands of French tricolour flags in support of Marine Le Pen, who's one step closer to launching her presidential campaign. She vows to defend an independent France.
The moment has come to put France, a free France, back at the heart of all the decision-making on the world stage. The moment has come to put a free, equal and sovereign France back among other nations that are free, equal and sovereign.
And there's a new campaign slogan, the candidate of the people. The party supporters say she's more than just the face of the National Front.
She is the National Front, and we are her supporters. We are voting for Marine Le Pen.
You can see that she's simple. She doesn't wear Chanel or Louboutin on her feet. She's a symbol of France.
This year's party conference is a showcase of the National Front's strategy, focusing on her personality rather than the party. She signs autographs, there's memorabilia and even photos of the presidential candidate.
I'm going to post them on my fridge.
Opinion polls show Marine Le Pen will qualify for the second round of the presidential election. But for now, she's not yet fully launched her campaign. She's waiting to find out who her opponents from the left and right parties will be after the primaries are over.
OK, so we don't know who her opponents are going to be, but the opinion polls are saying that Marine Le Pen will probably make it through to the second round of the two rounds of the presidential elections next year. So first question for you, gentlemen, is what chance do you think Marine Le Pen has of actually becoming the next president of France? Gregory?
I still think it's limited. I mean, all the polls show her in the second round, but every time that they show a matchup between her and any of the potential opponents in the second round, she loses. To some, she loses a lot. For instance, to Juppé, to Alain Juppé, sort of the more moderate candidate, the more moderate candidate of the centre-right party.
Well, who's expected maybe to be a candidate.
Who is expected to be a candidate. She loses to him by a huge margin. She loses to Hollande and to Sarkozy by much smaller margins, but she still loses. So I think for the moment, I think for 2017, I just don't see it. But 2022?
Stefan?
Yeah, it's boring, but I do agree. Whenever there's a Front National candidate in the second round, that's actually only happened once in 2002.
And that was Marine Le Pen's father, Jean-Marie Le Pen.
Yeah. There's a dynamic in France that consists of people going to the polls just to vote against her. This will probably also be the case next year. But she will have a much better result than her father in 2002. She's still very young in French political terms. She's only like 46 or 47.
48, I think.
48, which is like 18 in normal countries. But in French politics, you're a rookie. So indeed, in 2022, she will be like 53, 54. And that will be a very good age to become France's next president.
So, obviously, you mentioned 2002 when her father, Jean-Marie Le Pen, got through the second round. He was beaten by Jacques Chirac with 82% at the end of that second round. You don't think that if she gets through to the second round this time round, whether it be opposite Nicolas Sarkozy, the former French president, whether it be opposite Alain Juppé, the former prime minister on the right, or opposite maybe François Hollande, the current president on the left, in the second round, she will be beaten by such a huge score?
I don't think so, because the situation is completely different from 2002. Back in those days, people were a little bit ashamed of voting for the Front National. I think 5 years ago or something like that, that's changed into people admitting that they were voting Front National.
She's so different than her father.
She's very different. That plays, of course, a part. And now we've seen that in this report, people are actually proud of voting Marine Le Pen. So this is a completely different situation than 12, 13 years ago.
Do you think she should fear Nicolas Sarkozy more than François Hollande as a potential candidate in the second round, or she should fear all of these potential candidates?
I think right now there's just a ceiling on her vote. And the ceiling seems to be somewhere between 30 and 40% seems to be the ceiling on what she can get now. But when her father was the leader, the ceiling was about 20. If she loses this election, but the next president manages to see his popularity fall to the degree that Hollande has seen in this current term, then her ceiling, there'll be a new ceiling. And if her ceiling now is between 30 and 40, next time it's, let's say, between 40 and 50. And then we're talking, you know, then we're talking being in there with a chance.
This might seem a little strange for TV viewers who are not in France. The opinion polls show that 70% of French people don't actually want Marine Le Pen to become president of France. She seems to be gaining more and more support in France itself from the working classes, from certain sectors of society. Why would people vote for Marine Le Pen when she's never held a public office, and the opinion polls show that most people don't want her to become president?
Because the people who have held public office are deemed to have not done a very good job in them. I mean, she's just surfing on the same dissatisfaction with ruling elites that we see in the US, that we see in Britain, that we see in Germany, that we see in Italy. Well, maybe Germany a bit less, but certainly that we see in Britain, the US, and Italy for sure.
Do you think, Stéphane, that this is a sign that people are annoyed with the ruling classes in France, that the current president, François Hollande, is vastly unpopular? Is this the vote for Marine Le Pen is more a protest vote, people sticking two fingers up at the Élysée Palace saying we want to change, and she might be the one to be the protest vote, but not necessarily to run the country afterwards?
Well, originally it was a protest vote, but I think it has transformed into a real vote. People really are standing behind Marine Le Pen and her ideas. I think it's something we're seeing in all the old democracies, the mature democracies. I mean, even Donald Trump never held office, and he may be the next president of the United States. We see that in all the European countries around us, that the sitting political class is basically done. They're all under siege of the populists in many countries around us. So there's a general dissatisfaction with politics, and people think that these voices that they will be represented by them and they will do a better job. But the irony or the paradox is that as soon as Marine Le Pen gets into office, or all the other populists in the other countries in Europe, then they will have to show what they can do, and then they will very quickly realize that they will not much be better than the other candidates. So that's. But the people, the electorate really don't care. Look at the Brexit, for instance. So many arguments that have been used by the Brexit camp, they were false. They were just, errors or lies. And even when the electorate was confronted with these lies, they said, well, we don't mind. We're fed up with them. And I think that general feeling is something we see everywhere, including the United States, and that's her success, part of her success.
Okay, Gregory, here's another question for you now. Marine Le Pen has an image problem. She's popular amongst the working classes, what they call the couche populaire in France, but she is not very popular in big cities and towns like Paris, for example. She's not very popular amongst the middle classes and the older people of France. What can she do to try to seduce that part of the electorate to give her more of a solid power base?
I think just probably continue the way she's been. I mean, if you take a look at what to compare to her father, who was an openly racist, anti-Semite, everything, she's really dropped she's dropped all the rhetoric. And we mentioned about her months of silence. She was silent because guys like Sarkozy were doing all the talking for her. They were the ones screaming about burkinis. They were screaming about pork in school menus and things like that. And she just kept very silent over the summer, kept above the fray, and actually looked more statesman-like than Sarkozy did over the summer. And I think that she's probably just has to continue on that track of kind of normalization of her party. As I said, I think that for this election, there's a ceiling. There's a ceiling on her that I don't think she can get over before the election next spring.
Okay,
but after that,
Very briefly, her electoral campaign appears to a great part based on demagogy, populist policies. Is there any way that if she's elected, she could actually make those policies, bring those policies in and make them work? Cutting down immigration, building barriers, putting France out of the EU, pulling France out of the euro. How realistic is it?
It is, well, it's partly realistic because she thinks she will be able to get out of all kinds of international treaties, which is extremely complicated, but not impossible. I think it will have a huge impact on France's society if she does. Imagine France leaving the European Union. That will basically mean the end of the European Union. So I think she can dream on, but once she will be in office, then she will be confronted with reality.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there, unfortunately. Thanks very much indeed for taking part in the programme. And we'll see you next week for another edition of the Face Off here on France 24. Thanks very much for watching. Stay with us for more news coming right up.